Are you ready to be connected? You're listening to the Insured Connection podcast by Pica Group, a pro assurance company, where we provide expert advice for your practice when you need it most. We connect you with industry leaders to discuss timely topics so you can listen, learn, and get back to caring for your patients. Now, let's connect.
Well, hello, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Adrianne Ross at the Insured Connection. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have enjoyed, the guests as much as I have enjoyed interviewing them. And so tonight or today, I'm really excited to introduce to you someone who's a student. I'm going to let her tell a little bit more, but someone who I got into a really interesting conversation with, and she has just a lot of stories about how she got here. And I just think that it's a great opportunity for each one of us to learn more about each other and kind of where we've come from. And maybe we can appreciate, the profession as a whole from just the little parts of us that make it. So Masa, this is Masa Seif. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you. It's running into you has been has been great, and I'm here now. But I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you tell our audience just, a little bit about you and what year you are and what school you go to?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Masa Seif. I go to Kent State University, Podiatric School, my fourth year, and I'm currently here at Emory doing an externship for the month of December. I am a Syrian immigrant. I was born and raised in Syria. I moved to the United States in 2013, so it's been about 10, 11 years. Went to Eastern Michigan University for my undergrad with my neuroscience degree. Took a couple gap years, worked in the medical field and the sports field, and found my way to podiatry.
Wonderful. So I think the thing that's, pretty fascinating about your story, you mentioned that you were born and raised in Syria.
Mhm.
So what was that like? And then coming to the United States, and how did that journey lead you into podiatry?
So my move to the United States came as a shock. We were not planning. We were not planning to move. I did not see that in my future. Obviously, I was in my senior year actually in Syria when the Russian Revolution started, and we had to move to the United States. Well, first we moved to Jordan for a couple months. We thought we're going to be there for a couple months until everything settles down, and we're going to come back to Syria and just live life as normal. That didn't happen. We stayed in Jordan for a few months, and then we moved to the U.S. Um, because we didn't really have anything in Jordan, so there was no way to get into schools. The process was really hard, so we had to find somewhere else that we can at least have a future and
Mhm.
continue my dreams of being a doctor. I've always dreamed of being a doctor. In Syria, there is really a direct way to become a doctor. There isn't really like all these options of being a podiatric medicine or any other those type of fields. You go into medical school, and then from then you just pick your specialty. So podiatric medicine has never been on my radar, obviously, before I moved here.
Yeah.
But the transition was very difficult to say the least. Now in hindsight, it doesn't seem as bad as it is, but at the moment it was extremely difficult and extremely shocking. It's a cultural shock, and basically,
Sure.
um, you live in a completely different environment, surrounded by completely different people, surrounded by people who look like you, who talk like you, who have the same values, practice the same thing you practice. So living here and not knowing anybody, not speaking the language, we barely had any family here. We just knew that there was a lot of Arab community in Michigan, so we ended up moving to Michigan.
Okay.
Um, but you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, so it was definitely a culture shock, and to get used to that took a while. I'm honestly say it took me at least 7 8 years. I've been recently been acclimated into um, being a United States citizen or an American citizen. But yeah, I started when I first came here. It was in January, so it was around that time when people apply for colleges and You apply for scholarships and where do you want to go? What do you want to do? So it was a little bit too late in that cycle for me to go and apply to all those schools. I was in my senior year at the time. So I had to take a step back, and I was held back because I didn't speak the language first. And
Sure.
second, because I just didn't have the time or the means at the time to apply to colleges. So I had to do my junior year all over again and then senior year.
Mhm.
And that was by itself, that was a little difficult because I went through schooling already and I just had to do a few more years of schooling, and knowing that I have a medical field in practice in the future, or medical school in the future, that's already adding to the years.
Yeah.
So that was discouraging at first, but I was determined to learn the language really quickly. I listened to a lot of music, watched a lot of movies, subtitles.
That
uh,
was my question. How did you learn the language so well? Because you speak beautifully now.
Thank you. I mean, my accent still comes out every now and then, but thank you.
Uh-huh.
Back in Syria, we do have some English. You learn the basics, like the ABCs, hi, how are you? And you kind of understand a little bit, but I was nowhere near fluent in speaking it or even understanding it. So movies, yes, movies and music. Movies, I was watching movies with English subtitles so I can kind of
Mhm.
pick up on what they're saying. And then I would go back and watch it in Arabic so I can, make that
Mhm.
connection. And just being exposed to it at school, being just listening to music all the time, I kind of caught on. I did a lot of
Mhm.
reading. Um, yeah, and thankfully, I learned pretty quickly, and I was able to move up in school uh, faster than the average non-English speaking person would, because you have to
Yeah.
take English as second language classes when you first come here, and then you have to
Yeah.
pass those to be able to be placed into regular classrooms. So I
Absolutely.
didn't I didn't want that process to be longer than it should. So I had to do what I had to do.
You were pretty motivated, for lack of a better term.
I was, because I didn't like feeling like I was behind. And that was
Mm.
one of the main things about being an immigrant here is you always
Mm.
have to catch up. You always
Mm.
feel like you have to catch up. You always feel like you have something to prove in a way.
Mm.
Like what you're hearing? Go ahead and subscribe so you never miss an episode again. Now, let's continue to connect on today's topic.
That was part of my question was, coming from an immigrant background, how does that impact the way you learn, the way that your drive, being in medical school, you're going to be a physician in the United States, and does that drive you or give you a different level of drive, or how does that change your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have a chip on my shoulder. It's always that fire in me because growing up in Syria and leaving during times where people were, being killed, being detained
Mm.
for simply voicing and simply just opposing the government.
Mm.
And to me, it felt like I had the opportunity to escape that people did not have.
Mm.
Um, because my grandpa was well known into politics, so we kind of had a connection to leave. Whether it was willingly or not, we did have that way to leave Syria. A lot of
Mm.
people didn't, and a lot of people didn't get the chance to leave, and a lot of people had to live through the misery and the torture and just a dictatorship of a regime that they didn't have any means to leave the country. They had to endure all that. So for me, that was something that I always keep in mind, that I was given this great opportunity of leaving and being free in a country that I wasn't. Um, how do I word this without getting too emotional about the subject?
It's okay.
Um, you know, freedom for me was never absolute, obviously.
Mhm.
Freedom had always had taxes back home. So coming here, you have all the freedom to pursue everything that you want to pursue. Being a doctor, to pursue if you want to be an artist, if you want to be a musician, you have all these doors open for you. And me having this opportunity makes me even more motivated because I am trying to prove that I can do this. I am doing it for the people who couldn't do it. I'm doing it for the
Mhm.
people or friends who were murdered. friend who weren't able to make it out. So it's always that fire in you that I have to do it. I have to do it for me. I have to do it to prove to me that I took advantage of this opportunity that I was blessed with, and to be able to prove that, coming from a hard background, coming from uh, growing up in war, seeing people being killed and tortured is doesn't really it shouldn't really stop you from pursuing who you are. It's part of you. It becomes part of you. It drives you to even succeed even more, because you have to prove yourself. You have to prove that the journey was worth it. You know.
It's the it's interesting though. So many people, it's like, you hear of people going to war and when they come back, it's interesting. It's because so many people, we don't have any context for that. We don't understand. So even just hearing you say, I'm here, I'm pursuing this, I'm pursuing it for the friends that didn't get out. I'm pursuing for the friends that were murdered. It's just really, really hard for some people, living in the United States to have any concept of what that's like.
Absolutely. Yes. And sometimes I struggle with that concept myself. I'm here. Some of my friends are not. I'm here. I'm
Mm.
opportunity. I have the freedom to pursue anything that I want in the world. I have the means to do it. I have the opportunities. I have all the doors that would be open for me. And I never take this for granted, and I'm always grateful, and to be here, honestly, to be alive, to be here, to have
Yeah.
survived this transition 10 years later. And it's been a journey for sure. It's been ups and downs for sure. It's been a journey. but I
Well,
but I can honestly say that it makes me who I am. It makes me good at what I do. It
yeah.
makes me even more motivated to be successful. Mm.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, we had talked about you possibly coming on and being a guest. I mean, before the news came out.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if all of our listeners are aware, but was it nearly 50 years?
It
You
was,
know,
yes.
so explain to our listeners kind of what has been happening in Syria and what recently just took place so everybody understands why this is so momentous.
Yes, it's yesterday. I've been celebrating. I've been in ecstatic ever since yesterday, overwhelmed with joy. I can't even describe it. But basically, we've had what they called it a democratic regime in Syria that have been in place since the 90s. So it's first of all, it was Hafez al-Assad, which was the president of Syria. It was a dictatorship. It's either with us or you're underground somewhere or you're murdered or killed. And if you ever try to voice your opinions about the things that the government do, or me being just having an opinion at that, your fate was either being detained for so many years or killed, honestly. So we always grew up in that fear of, these walls have ears, your phones are tapped, you can't say anything about the government. So I kind of grew up and was born into that regime. um, and I was born into a family that was against the government since day one. So this has been my childhood ever since I can remember. Um, and my grandpa was a part of the early days of revolutionaries and protesters against the government. He was a businessman who was trying to advance the economy, um, but then stumbled across schemes that the government was doing to steal money from people. And he voiced his opinions. He wrote a book about it, and they didn't like it. So he was threatened to be detained, or he was offered a huge amount of money. You either take the money and kind of stand to the side, or we're gonna make your life a living hell. And he chose the latter, of course. So it's just been a fight against a corrupt government ever since I can remember. And it's just growing up in that family. It just it was hard, to say the least. We've endured a lot of torture, either financial, emotional, or, having friends killed for basically just voicing opinions, or detained, or uh, murdered. So it's been a long time coming. And then the revolution, the reason why I left Syria was when the revolution started in 2011. And it was basically, it all stemmed from kids being tortured by the government with their genitalia mutilated, gunshots. You see pictures, you see people being murdered for, again, voicing their opinions. And it was a 13-year-old boy that started all of this. His pictures were all over the internet. I don't know if any of the listeners do remember or have seen this. But it kind of ignited the whole revolution against the government and formed the resistance. And we were kind of demonstrating, even though it was dangerous. People were out in the streets demonstrating against the government. We were doing it in secret. We were planning in private. Um, until it just kind of escalated, and deadly force was being used freely. So at some point, my family was targeted as opposers of the government, as resistance, as protesters, and especially because we have a history of opposing the government. So we were threatened to be killed if we don't leave the country. So we kind of left the country in a hurry because there was an attempt on my grandfather's life before we left Syria, a couple days actually before we left Syria. So we just gathered what we had and we got into a car and we drove to Jordan. Like I said, we were hoping that it was going to be a couple months, everything will go back to normal. The government will be overthrown and then we'll go back to a peaceful Syria. And that day was 11 years ago. And we finally got that day. We have seen that day yesterday. The government was overthrown. A 50-year dictatorship has finally come to an end, and I can't even describe the feeling. It still feels so surreal.
Want to receive a monthly newsletter with topics from the Insured Connection? Head over to picagroup.com/Insured Connection and join our email list to have it delivered right to your inbox.
People that have been detained for 40 years, 50 years have been let out of these jails, underground jails, and just the videos on the internet of people reconnecting and people who thought their brother was dead or their father was dead or their mother was dead, finally you're reuniting after all these years. And we're hoping, I have family members that have been presumed dead, but no bodies were found. We are hoping and praying that there are one of those people that will let out. So it kind of just the anxiety and the stress of, you checking the names of who got out and who are those people. And again, there are people who lost their memories, or people who don't even know what year it is. People are coming out saying, they didn't even know that the new president was in place. They thought it was the old president still. And it's honestly so heartbreaking, but also so a happy moment, a happy day for us. Yesterday was definitely a happy day for us. It's a new beginning. It gives you hope for the future, of course. And I tell you, I can't wait to go home. I'm looking at flights. I'm looking at flights every single day. It just, as soon as I have a day or two off, I don't really care. I'm going home. Especially after being not able to go home for 10 years because we were blacklisted we're on a blacklist from going into Syria. And obviously when you are a political refugee, you can't really go back to the country that you were a refugee, where you were escaping from, sorry. So now that, everything is gone and the government has been overthrown, I can safely go back home and I cannot wait. Not wait. I will still continue my goal of becoming a podiatrist. Of course, I will not let go of that goal. But it's closure per se. I left in a very abrupt manner without saying bye to family, friends, and people that I grew up with, and people that I haven't seen in 11, 12 years. It just I have to get back as soon as I can. Well, as soon as I get the means, I'm going back.
No, I can imagine. Masa, it is, I mean, I can hear it. I can hear it in your voice, all the joy, and I can hear just the anxiety. I can hear every emotion. And I'm really, really grateful that our listeners were able to have a chance. And I've had the chance to be able just even to meet you, to be able to hear your story. And when you finish medical school and you come out as a practicing, podiatric surgeon, it's going to be pretty amazing, just to know that the people that you're treating, whether you come across someone who's Syrian or not, you've been a refugee.
Mhm.
You've been where a lot of people have not been before. And so the depth of your compassion, I can only imagine. So thank you so, so much for just being willing to even tell your story.
No, thank you for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've never really shared the story before, or never really got the forum to or the platform to share the story. So I'm glad that people will be able to hear this and kind of get a point of view of what your your classmate would had gone through, or your doctor had gone through, or
Yeah.
the challenges of many of us face in today's world in medicine. Man, yeah.
Well, Masa, hopefully at some point, perhaps after you've gone back home, maybe we can do a follow up because I would love to hear, some of the
Yeah,
stories too. Uh,
absolutely.
Yeah. So for all our listeners, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Insured Connection and Masa Seif. If you do get a chance and to message her or to even potentially see her, she's very involved, obviously, in the profession as well. And I imagine she's going to be a leader, within our profession. So please encourage her and just thank her for sharing the story. We will continue to share stories of those that train with you, walk by you, and hopefully encourage even our graduate students and our college students, to really embark on podiatry because this seems to be one of those outlets for you, um, and really kind of taking you to the next level in your journey. So thank you again for that, Masa. We really appreciate you.
You. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. You can join us again on our next episode, and we look forward to seeing you then.
And that's it for this week's episode. But let's continue connecting. If you're enjoying the Insured Connection, don't forget to leave a review on your streaming platform and subscribe now so you can connect with us each time we post a new episode. To stay connected with us throughout the week and to tell us topics we should discuss on future episodes, go to picagroup.com/Insured Connection.